Daniel Reyes had survived a hostile takeover meeting, a furious board of investors, and one very memorable lawsuit threat from a man who owned 3 yachts. None of that prepared him for the sound of his 6-year-old daughter standing in the middle of a packed school gymnasium, pointing at a complete stranger and shouting at the top of her lungs, "Mommy, you came!" Every head in that gym turned. 300 parents, 40 teachers, one stunned CEO in a cream-colored blazer who had simply been looking for the exit sign. And Daniel, single father, full-time provider, a man who had not said the word mom out loud in his house in 3 years, stood frozen by the snack table holding 2 paper cups of lukewarm lemonade, watching his entire carefully built world tilt sideways in front of everyone he knew. This is the story of how one little girl's wish, one impossible coincidence, and one woman who had everything except a family collided in a school gymnasium on a Tuesday night and changed all 3 of their lives forever. Stick around, this one's gonna hit different. Daniel Reyes's alarm went off at 5:45 every single morning, rain or shine, holiday or heartbreak. That was the deal he'd made with himself the day his wife left. 3 years ago, Vanessa had packed 2 suitcases, kissed their daughter Maya on the forehead, and told Daniel she needed to find herself somewhere that wasn't tied down by diaper bags and parent-teacher conferences. She'd found herself, all right, 3 states away, married to a man who owned a vineyard, posting sunset photos with captions about living authentically. Daniel didn't post anything. He just got up at 5:45 and made breakfast. He worked as a project manager at a mid-sized logistics company, the kind of job that paid the mortgage and not much else. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the career he had imagined for himself back when he was 25 and convinced he'd run his own company by 30. But it had health insurance, flexible hours when Naya got sick, and a boss who didn't ask questions when he needed to leave early for school events. Maya was 6, going on 30. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn jaw, and an imagination so vivid that Daniel sometimes wondered if she lived in a slightly different, more colorful version of reality than the rest of them. She also had a wound that Daniel could never quite stitch closed, no matter how many bedtime stories he read or pancakes he flipped into funny shapes. Maya wanted a mom, not abstractly, specifically. She drew pictures of our family that included a woman with brown hair she'd never met, based entirely on guesswork and longing. Daniel had tried therapy for her, twice. The child psychologist said it was normal, that kids fill in gaps with hope, that this too would soften with time. Daniel nodded along in those sessions and went home and watched his daughter circle "Bring your favorite person to school day" on the school calendar with a yellow highlighter and write "Mommy" in the blank line for guest name and hand it to him to sign like it was the most natural thing in the world. He didn't correct her. He never knew how. That particular Tuesday wasn't Bring Your Favorite Person Day. It was just the elementary school's fall family showcase, a night where every grade performed a little something, parents mingled awkwardly over juice boxes, and the PTA sold raffle tickets for a gift basket nobody really wanted. Daniel almost didn't go. He'd had a brutal day, a shipment delayed at the port, a client threatening to pull a contract, a headache pulsing behind his left eye since lunch. He'd spent 45 minutes on the phone with a customs broker listening to hold music that sounded like it had been recorded in 1987, while his email inbox filled up with messages marked urgent in red letters that by the end of the day had stopped meaning anything at all. But Maya had practiced her part in the 1st grade friendship song for 2 straight weeks, conducting invisible choirs in the bathtub, lining up her stuffed animals on the living room couch as a pretend audience, and bowing to them when she finished. There was no universe in which Daniel Reyes missed that. So he put on a clean shirt, grabbed his car keys, and drove to Lincoln Elementary with a 6-year-old in the back seat who would not stop talking about how Mrs. Patterson said she had the loudest, proudest voice in the whole class. "Daddy, do you think Mrs. Patterson was lying to make me feel good, or do you think it's true?" Maya asked from her booster seat, swinging her legs. I think Mrs. Patterson doesn't lie to kids about their singing voices. Teachers save their white lies for things like recess is almost over. Maya laughed, the sound filling the small car, and for a moment Daniel let himself just enjoy it, the ordinary, unremarkable joy of driving his daughter to a school event on a Tuesday evening, no idea it was the last ordinary moment either of them would have for a long while. They pulled into the school parking lot 10 minutes later than Daniel had hoped, the lot already crowded with minivans and SUVs nosed in at careless angles, parents hurrying toward the gymnasium doors with phones raised to capture the walk-in, siblings dragging their feet, somebody's toddler already mid-tantrum near the flagpole. Daniel found a spot near the far end, gathered Maya's backpack and her water bottle and the small paper folder with her song lyrics printed in oversized font, and walked her across the lot with her hand wrapped tightly around two of his fingers. "Are you nervous?" he asked, more as a habit than real concern. "No," she said matter-of-factly. "I'm excited. Nervous is for things you don't want to happen. I want this to happen." Daniel smiled at that, filing it away the way he filed away most of Maya's small, accidentally profound observations, the kind that made him wonder not for the first time whether 6-year-olds understood more about the difference between fear and anticipation than most adults ever managed to. Neither of them had any idea what was waiting for them in that gymnasium. 3 miles away, in a glass office on the top floor of a downtown high-rise, Olivia Hartman was staring at a calendar invite she had no memory of accepting. Lincoln Elementary Fall Family Showcase, 6:30 p.m. Olivia was the CEO of Hartman Logistics Group, a $200 million freight and distribution company her father had built from a single truck and a stubborn refusal to quit. She had taken over 4 years ago, after her father's heart gave out in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and unfinished business. Since then, she had grown the company by 40%, fired 3 VPs who couldn't keep up, and built a reputation as someone who showed up at 6 a.m. and left after everyone else had gone. She had also, somewhere in those 4 years, stopped having anything resembling a personal life. No husband, no kids, a goldfish her assistant had bought her as an office warming gift that had, against all odds, survived 2 years on a diet of forgotten feedings and sheer spite. She'd named it Quarterly, as a joke that had stopped being funny around month 3 but stuck anyway. So why was there a calendar invite for an elementary school event sitting in her inbox? The answer, when she finally tracked it down, was almost funny. Hartman Logistics sponsored a literacy program at 3 local elementary schools, including Lincoln. As part of the partnership, a company representative was supposed to attend the fall showcase and say a few words about the program before the kids' performances. Her VP of Community Relations was scheduled to go. Her VP of Community Relations had a family emergency that afternoon and texted Olivia in a panic 40 minutes before the event, begging her to cover for him, because you're literally the only other exec who's even listed as a school program contact. Please, I owe you forever. Olivia almost said no. She had 3 contracts to review and a board call at 8 a.m. Her calendar for the rest of the week was a wall of color-coded blocks with no gaps, no breathing room, nothing resembling rest. But something, exhaustion maybe, or a strange flicker of curiosity about what regular Tuesday evenings looked like for regular families, made her say yes. She changed out of her power suit into something softer, a cream blazer over jeans, and drove to Lincoln Elementary alone, GPS guiding her through unfamiliar suburban streets she hadn't driven in years. She passed a park where kids were still playing on swings in the fading evening light, a strip mall with a pizza place she vaguely remembered from childhood, a world that existed entirely outside the glass walls of her office and that she had almost forgotten was still running parallel to her own. She walked into that gymnasium 15 minutes late, completely unprepared for what was about to happen, holding a folder of literacy program talking points she would never get the chance to deliver. The gym was loud, in the particular way only elementary schools can be loud. Overlapping conversations, a microphone shrieking with feedback, kids running between rows of folding chairs while parents tried to heartedly to corral them. Somewhere near the stage, a kindergarten teacher was attempting to organize 40 children into something resembling a straight line, with limited success. Daniel had found a spot near the side wall, close enough to see Maya's class lining up for their performance, holding 2 paper cups of lemonade because Maya had insisted he get one too, so we can toast after I sing. Olivia slipped in through the side door, scanning the crowd for whoever was supposed to introduce her, looking distinctly like someone who had never set foot in an elementary school gymnasium in her adult life. She didn't fit the scene, not because of anything she wore, but because of the way she stood, shoulders set, eyes scanning exits the way executives do in every room they enter. A part of her brain was already drafting the talking points she'd give, even though no one had come to find her, even though she had no idea where she was supposed to stand. Maya spotted her from the stage line. Here's the thing about 6-year-olds. They don't see the world the way adults do. They see shapes that match the shape of what they want. And Olivia, same warm brown hair as the woman in Maya's drawings, same uncertain, searching expression Maya had imagined 1,000 times during quiet moments at bedtime, matched something in Maya's heart that had been waiting years to be matched. Maya broke from the line. "Mommy!" The word cracked across the gymnasium like a dropped plate. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The feedback screeching microphone went silent as the PTA mom holding it turned to look. Maya ran, actually ran, sneakers squeaking on gym floor, straight at Olivia Hartman, arms wide open, face lit up with a joy so pure and so enormous that several parents nearby actually gasped. "You came! You came to my school! I told everyone you would come! I told them, and you came!" Olivia froze. Every instinct that had carried her through hostile boardrooms and ruthless negotiations failed her completely. She had no framework for this. There was no quarterly report, no precedent, no advisor whispering in her ear. There was just a small girl wrapping both arms around her waist, sobbing happy tears into her cream blazer, calling her mommy with the kind of certainty that only children possess. And there was Daniel. Daniel had dropped both paper cups of lemonade. He didn't even notice the liquid soaking into his shoes. He was moving through the crowd, heart hammering, trying to process what he was seeing, trying to figure out who this woman was, how she knew his daughter, why Maya was calling her. No, he knew why. He'd known this day might come eventually, in some form. He just never imagined it happening in front of the entire school, with a stranger paralyzed in the middle of it, with 300 parents now staring at his daughter, at this woman, at him. Daniel. His voice came out rougher than he intended. He crouched down, gently prying her arms loose, pulling her back just slightly. "Maya, sweetheart, look at me." Maya looked up at her father, confusion blooming across her face, the joy starting to crack at the edges. "That's Mommy, Daddy. She came." "Baby, Daniel glanced up at Olivia, who was staring at him with an expression he would later describe as a woman watching her own life get rewritten in real time without her permission. He saw no recognition there, no familiarity, just shock and something else, something softer, something that looked almost like grief. "I'm so sorry," he said to Olivia, the words tumbling out fast. I have no idea why she—" "It's okay," Olivia said, though her voice shook slightly. She knelt down to Maya's level, something in her posture shifting, softening in a way that surprised even her. "Hi, sweetheart. What's your name?" "You know my name," Maya said, lip trembling. "I'm Maya." "Maya," Olivia repeated, like she was trying the name on, testing how it fit. "That's a really pretty name." "You're not going to leave again, right?" Maya's voice cracked. "You came back this time." The gymnasium had gone almost completely silent now. 300 parents frozen mid-conversation, watching a scene they had absolutely no context for and could not look away from. Somewhere near the back, someone's phone camera was raised, then quickly lowered again, as if even the instinct to film felt wrong in the face of something this raw. Olivia looked up at Daniel, a silent, desperate question passing between two strangers who had never met before that exact moment. What do we do? What do we say?" And neither of them had an answer. Maya's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, mercifully intervened, gently explaining to the class that the performance would start in 5 minutes, herding the other kids back into formation, while throwing Daniel a sympathetic look that said, "I have no idea what just happened, but I've got your back." Daniel carried Maya, now quietly crying into his shoulder, to a corner of the gym near the trophy case, away from the worst of the staring. Olivia, after a moment of hesitation that felt like it lasted an entire year, followed. "I'm really sorry," he said again, rubbing Maya's back in slow circles. "Her mother left 3 years ago. Maya's never really... She doesn't talk about it much, but she's always wanted..." She stopped, glancing down at his daughter's wet eyes, not wanting to say the rest of the sentence in front of her. "You don't have to explain," Olivia said quietly. "I'm not upset. I genuinely don't know what to say to her." "Yeah," Daniel exhaled. "Join the club." There was a strange, fragile pause. 2 adults who had never spoken before, bound together for 30 seconds by a 6-year-old's broken heart and unstoppable hope. Around them, the gym slowly returned to its normal hum, parents whispering to each other, a few throwing curious glances their way before politely looking elsewhere. "I'm Daniel Reyes. This is Maya. Olivia Hartman." Something flickered across Daniel's face. Recognition, maybe, the kind that comes from reading a logo on too many delivery trucks. "Hartman Logistics?" "Guilty," Olivia said, a small, tired smile pulling at her mouth. "Though tonight I think I'm failing pretty badly at whatever my actual job here was supposed to be." Maya lifted her head off her father's shoulder, looking through Olivia through puffy eyes. "Are you mad at me?" "No," Olivia said immediately, surprising herself with how fast and how certain the answer came. "Not even a little bit." "I just really wanted you to be my mommy," Maya whispered, the kind of devastating honesty only children are capable of. "I have a drawing of you. I made it before I even knew your name. You look just like her." Daniel closed his eyes briefly, the weight of 3 years of unspoken grief pressing down on his chest. Olivia didn't know what compelled her to say what she said next. Maybe it was the goldfish waiting alone in her empty apartment. Maybe it was 4 years of 6 a.m. mornings with no one to come home to. Maybe it was simply the unbearable sincerity in a 6-year-old. "Can I see the drawing sometime? I'd really like to see it." Maya's whole face transformed. "Really? Really?"
Daniel looked at Olivia over his daughter's head, something complicated passing through his eyes. Gratitude, caution, and a flicker of something he couldn't quite name yet. "You don't have to do that," he said quietly, once Maya had buried her face back into his shoulder, calmer now. "You can I'll explain it to her tomorrow. Find a way to make it make sense. You don't owe us anything." "I know I don't," Olivia said. "I want to." And the strangest part, the part Olivia would replay in her head for days afterward, was that it was true. The first-grade friendship song started a few minutes later. Maya, eyes still red, sang every word from the front row, glancing back once at the corner near the trophy case where her father stood watching, and where, to her quiet, private relief, Olivia was still there too, having stayed for the performance instead of slipping out the side door she'd originally walked in through. Olivia didn't sleep well that night. She kept replaying the moment Maya's arms wrapped around her waist, the unguarded force of it, a kind of trust she hadn't felt directed at her in years, not from board members, not from investors, not even from her own father in his final exhausted months. By 7 a.m., sitting at her kitchen island with cold coffee and the goldfish swimming lazy circles beside her laptop, she had talked herself into and out of calling Daniel Reyes roughly 6 times. "This isn't your business. You met them for 10 minutes. You have a literacy program to actually run. You have a board call. You have..." She picked up her phone and texted the school's main office, asking with more vulnerability than she'd shown in a professional context in years if there was any way to pass along a note to Maya's father, Daniel Reyes. "I want to follow up about last night respectfully, if he's open to it." Daniel, meanwhile, was having an entirely different morning. He'd barely slept either, replaying every second, trying to figure out how to talk to Maya about it without crushing her further, terrified that Olivia Hartman's kindness in the moment had just been politeness, the kind successful people perform automatically and then forget about by their next meeting. He didn't expect to hear from her again. CEOs of $200 million companies don't usually circle back to single dads they met for 10 emotionally chaotic minutes in a school gym. So, when the front office called him at work to say Miss Hartman had reached out and left her direct cell number, he stared at the message for a full 2 minutes before he could believe it was real. He'd been in the middle of a call with the customs broker again, the same tinny hold music looping in his ear, and for a moment, the two realities, the mundane grind of his job and the impossible note sitting in his inbox, refused to fit together in his head. He texted her that evening, after Maya had gone to bed, his thumb hovering over the send button longer than he'd like to admit. "Hi, Olivia, it's Daniel, Maya's dad. Got your message through the school. Wanted to say thank you again for how kind you were last night. You really didn't have to be." The reply came almost instantly, like she'd been holding her phone the entire time. "I meant what I said about wanting to see the drawing, but only if that's something you and Maya are comfortable with. I don't want to make this harder for her or for you." Daniel read the message 4 times. "Can I ask you something honestly?" he typed. "Why?" There was a longer pause this time before Olivia's reply came through. "Honestly, I don't fully know. I think I just haven't felt like anyone needed me, really needed me, not professionally, in a very long time. And last night, for about 30 seconds, someone did. I know that's not a good enough reason on its own. I don't want to use your daughter to fill something in my own life. So, if you say no, I understand completely and I won't push." Daniel sat at his kitchen table for a long time after that text, looking at the drawing taped to the fridge. A woman with brown hair, a little girl in a yellow dress, a stick-figure family Maya had made entirely out of hope before reality had caught up to it. He typed back, "Coffee, just us, no Maya, this weekend. Let's talk first before anything involves her." Olivia's response came fast. "Yes, thank you." They met Saturday morning at a small coffee shop 2 towns over, neutral ground, Daniel had suggested, somewhere neither of them would run into people they knew. Olivia arrived first, dressed down in a way that surprised him. Jeans, a soft sweater, hair loose instead of pulled into the severe knot she imagined she wore to board meetings. She looked younger like this, less armored. She'd chosen a table near the back, away from the window, the kind of seat someone picks when they're trying not to be noticed. "Thank you for coming," she said as he sat down. "I half expected you to cancel." "I almost did," Daniel admitted, ordering a black coffee from the waiting barista. 3 times, actually. "What changed your mind?" He thought about it honestly before answering. "Maya asked me this morning if you were still real or if she'd made you up like she does sometimes with her imaginary friends. I didn't know how to answer that. I figured I owed her and myself an actual answer instead of a guess." Olivia wrapped both hands around her mug. "I keep thinking about how unfair this is to you. You've spent 3 years building a life for her, holding everything together by yourself, and then some stranger walks in and gets called mommy in front of the entire school. That had to have been awful for you to witness." "It was," Daniel said, surprising himself with the honesty. "Not because of you specifically, because it confirmed something I already knew, that I can't fill that gap for her, no matter how hard I try. I've been the only parent in that house for 3 years, and I still can't be everything she needs." "You shouldn't have to be everything," Olivia said quietly. "No single person is everything. That's not a flaw in you. That's just true for everyone." Daniel studied her for a moment. "Can I ask you something, honestly?" he asked. "Why elementary school events? You run a $200 million company. You could have sent literally anyone." Olivia laughed, a short, surprised sound. "My VP had a family emergency. I got roped in at the last minute. I almost said no." She paused. "I've been saying no to a lot of things lately. Dinners, vacations, anything that isn't work. My father built that company from a single truck, and when he died, I think I decided the only way to honor that was to disappear into it completely. I haven't had a real day off in 2 years." "That sounds lonely." "It is," Olivia said, and the admission seemed to cost her something. I didn't realize how lonely until a 6-year-old hugged me like she'd been waiting her whole life for me to show up. They sat with that for a moment, the coffee shop humming quietly around them. The hiss of the espresso machine, low conversation from a nearby table, the occasional bell above the door as someone came in for a Saturday morning pastry, a kind of ordinary peace neither of them had expected to find here. "I'm not asking you to be her mother," Daniel said finally. "I want to be clear about that. That's not what this is." "I know," Olivia said. "I'm not asking for that either. I don't even know if I'd know how." "So, what are we doing here?" Olivia considered the question seriously, like it deserved the same weight she gave to board decisions. "I think," she said slowly, "I'd like to know your daughter, not as a replacement for anything, just as whoever I end up being to her, if you'll let that happen slowly, carefully, on your terms. And maybe," she added quieter, "I'd like to know you too, as whatever this turns into, no pressure on either." Daniel looked at her for a long moment under the porch light, something unspoken passing between them. Not quite a promise, not quite anything with a name yet, but the early, careful shape of something that might become one. "Slowly," he agreed, "carefully, on my terms and Maya's." "Slowly," Olivia echoed, and something in her chest loosened for the first time in longer than she could remember. 3 weeks passed before Olivia met Maya again. 3 weeks of careful, deliberate pacing that Daniel insisted on. 3 weeks where Olivia and Daniel texted most nights, slowly building something neither of them had a name for yet. In those 3 weeks, Daniel found himself, almost against his will, looking forward to the small ping of a new message each night. Olivia found herself leaving the office at a reasonable hour for the first time in longer than she could remember, just so she'd have the mental space to actually respond, instead of typing distracted half-sentences between meetings. They talked about small things mostly: Maya's favorite cartoon, a problem at Olivia's office with a vendor contract, Daniel's slow, ongoing battle with a leaking kitchen faucet he kept meaning to fix. Nothing about the conversations felt urgent. That was, Daniel realized one night, exactly what made them feel safe. When the day finally came for Olivia to visit, she arrived at the Reyes' modest 2-bedroom house with a small gift. Not toys, Daniel had asked her not to overwhelm Maya with gifts, but a simple set of colored pencils, for more drawings, she'd said. Maya answered the door before Daniel could stop her, eyes going wide. "You're real," she breathed. "I'm real," Olivia confirmed, crouching down to Maya's eye level the way she'd seen Daniel do a dozen times now. "I told you I'd come see your drawing." Maya grabbed her hand, not asking permission, just taking it, the way children do, and pulled her toward the refrigerator where the original drawing still hung, slightly faded now, taped up with a piece of yellowing Scotch tape. "That's you," Maya said proudly, "and that's Daddy, and that's me. I drew it before I even met you for real." Olivia studied the drawing carefully, the careful crayon strokes, the lopsided sun in the corner, the family Maya had built entirely from longing before reality had caught up to it. She noticed, with a small ache in her chest, that the woman in the drawing had a tiny, hopeful smile, drawn larger than anyone else's mouth in the picture, as if she'd spent extra time making sure she looked happy to be there. "It's beautiful," Olivia said, and meant it. "Are you going to be my mommy now?" Maya asked, the question landing with the same blunt honesty as before, but softer this time, more curious. Daniel, standing in the kitchen doorway, held his breath. Olivia knelt down fully now, meeting Maya eye to eye. "I don't know yet, sweetheart. That's a big word, and big words take time to mean something true. But I'd really like to be your friend first, someone who comes to visit, who you can draw pictures for, who shows up. Would that be okay for now?" Maya considered this with the serious focus only children bring to enormous questions. "Like a maybe, Mommy?" Olivia glanced at Daniel, who gave the smallest, most uncertain nod, permission, encouragement, something in between. "Like a maybe, Mommy," Olivia agreed softly, "who's going to show up again and again for as long as you'll have me." Maya threw her arms around Olivia's neck, no longer desperate, just happy. The simple, uncomplicated happiness of a child who has just been told that someone is choosing, deliberately and clearly, to stay. Later that evening, after Maya had gone to bed, Daniel walked Olivia to her car. The street was quiet, porch lights glowing up and down the block. the kind of ordinary suburban evening that Olivia had almost forgotten existed outside her glass office. "Thank you for today," Daniel said, "for how careful you were with her." "Thank you for trusting me with her at all. I know that's not a small thing." "It's not," Daniel agreed, "but I think I'm starting to understand why I did." Olivia looked at him for a long moment under the porch light, something unspoken passing between them. Not quite a promise, not quite anything with a name yet, but the early careful shape of something that might become one. This isn't a fairy tale where the CEO falls instantly in love and a ring appears by the credits. Real life doesn't move that fast, and honestly, it shouldn't. What this story is something quieter, and maybe more important, a story about a little girl who was brave enough to say out loud what she needed, even when it embarrassed everyone in the room. A story about a single father who, after 3 years of carrying everything alone, finally let someone else stand beside him, carefully, slowly, on his own terms. And a story about a woman who built an empire and still felt completely empty until a stranger's daughter reminded her what it felt like to be needed for something that had nothing to do with quarterly earnings. Months later, Olivia still shows up most weekends, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to help with homework while Daniel cooks. She and Daniel talk most nights now, conversations that have slowly shifted from cautious and formal to something warmer, something neither of them is in a hurry to define out loud. Maya doesn't call her mommy anymore, not because anyone told her to stop, but because somewhere along the way she found a better word on her own. She calls her Liv, just Liv, her friend, her maybe someday, the woman who showed up and then kept showing up, week after week, proving with actions what words alone never could. There are still hard moments. There's a Tuesday, a few months after that first night, when Maya asks Olivia, completely out of nowhere while they're coloring at the kitchen table, whether her real mom ever thinks about her. Olivia doesn't have a good answer for that. Nobody would. But she sits with Maya through the question instead of rushing past it, lets the little girl talk it out at her own pace, and afterward quietly tells Daniel what happened so he isn't caught off guard the next time it comes up. It's a small thing. It's also, Daniel realizes, exactly the kind of thing a parent does. There's another evening, around the 5-month mark, when Maya gets sick with a stomach bug at 2 in the morning, and Daniel, exhausted, juggling a bucket and a thermometer and a load of laundry he's already started, texts Olivia almost as an afterthought, more venting than asking for help. Rough night, Maya's sick, probably going to be a long week. He doesn't expect a response until morning. Instead, his phone buzzes 20 minutes later. Olivia is standing on his porch in sweatpants and an old college hoodie, hair pulled back, holding a grocery bag with ginger ale and crackers and the specific brand of children's electrolyte drink her own assistant had recommended over a slightly bewildered phone call placed from a 24-hour pharmacy parking lot. "You didn't have to do this," Daniel said, opening the door, too tired to fully hide his surprise. "I know," Olivia said. "Go sleep for an hour. I've got her." He almost argued. 3 years of being the only parent in the house had trained him to never hand off the hard nights to anyone, but he's running on fumes, and something about the steadiness in her voice, the same voice she probably uses to calm down panicked board members, makes him step aside instead. He sleeps for 53 minutes on the living room couch, and when he wakes up, Olivia is sitting on the edge of Maya's bed, humming something low and off-key, rubbing slow circles on her back, exactly the way he does, like she'd been quietly studying his routines all along, just in case a night like this ever came. He doesn't say anything about it the next morning. He doesn't need to. Some things settle into a relationship quietly, without ceremony, and this is one of them. Olivia, for her part, has started leaving the office before 7 p.m. at least twice a week, a habit her assistant noticed before she did, and gently, teasingly, mentioned in passing. She still runs board meetings with the same sharp precision she always has, but there's a photo on her desk now, next to the goldfish tank, of a little girl in a yellow dress holding up a crayon drawing, grinning at the camera like she had just won something enormous. Nobody at the office has asked who the girl is. Olivia hasn't volunteered an explanation, but she catches herself smiling at the photo sometimes, in the middle of otherwise ordinary afternoons, and that alone tells her something has shifted in a way she doesn't want to undo.
Nobody knows exactly where this story ends. Not Daniel, who is slowly letting his guard down after years of bracing for people to leave. Not Olivia, who is still learning what it means to want something outside of a boardroom. And not Maya, who simply believes, with the unshakable faith only children possess, that good things, once they finally arrive, are worth waiting for. Maybe that's the most honest ending any of us can offer. Not happily ever after, but still going, still showing up, still choosing each other one ordinary Tuesday at a time. And sometimes, that's exactly enough. If this story moved you even a little, you're definitely not alone. There's something about a kid's honesty cutting straight through all our adult complications that just hits different. Drop a comment. What's your most embarrassing wrong text story? Subscribe for more stories like this. Share this with someone today.